It's good for us to be here. I appreciate that last song. I think about that second verse. We see what is it called? A paradox. No friend is so high and holy, yet no friend is so meek and lowly. And I really appreciated that. And of course, this month we're talking about Jesus. We're talking about being like Christ. Being like Christ. And I want to begin by a little, it's not a story, but a thing that whenever we were in high school, I played basketball. And my coach, he was so adamant about watching film. He said, we need to watch film, we need to watch the opponent, we need to watch what their plays are, all that other stuff so we can be prepared. But the thing about my coach was that he did a lot. And we couldn't ever take film serious because he'd be explaining something, and literally mid-sentence, he had to say, all right, this is what we're doing, and then this is what they, and in mid-sentence he would stop, pick up one of his Mountain Dew bottles, and spit in it, and then continue on like nothing happened. And we couldn't do it, like we just laughed, we couldn't take it serious, we couldn't do that. But I want to make a point about watching film. And most people that were involved in sports watch some sort of film. And I want to think about being like Christ, studying Jesus. We're essentially, in a way, we're watching film. We're watching film on Christ through the Word of God. And when we watch the film, our coach would always emphasize, guys, we're not just in here just to waste it. We're in here to learn. We're in here to apply it to the court. We're in here to be better. And we also watch film ourselves. We all did those things so we could be better. And this study is not just for us to look at Jesus and say, man, he's a friend that's so high and holy, yet so weak and lowly. But it's also for us to look at ourselves and say, am I weak and lowly? Am I holy? Do I have a high mental state? Am I that type of person? So when we think about these things, we're going to be looking at Christ and we're studying Christ, but we're looking at him to be proactive. We're looking at him to be proactive so that we can get off our brain couch, take Christianity and spirituality, to take it off of autopay. Take our spirituality off of autopay. Now, this month, my credit card, which has most of our autographs, is expired. So that means I have to go in and manually put in my new credit card information into all my autopays. And when we were doing it, I was like, this is such a hassle. Like, I have to go here and manually do this. But before, that's how everything was. You went and you paid. Unfortunately, many have taken this idea of autopay. Don't think about it, just set it and forget it. We've taken that and brought it to spirituality and spiritual things. It's very unfortunate because we allow other people to do the thinking for us, to do the studying for us, to do the evangelizing for us, to do the good works for us. We let other people do those things, and we take away the responsibility from ourselves so that we don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to develop or devote any mental energy towards it. And this series is to encourage us, let's not do that. Let's take spirituality off of autopay, and let's actually emphasize being a Christian, which perhaps the emphasis on being a Christian, being a disciple, is trying to be like Jesus. Maybe that's the case. Trying to be like Jesus in everything that we do. Our first verse is going to be Exodus chapter 34. Exodus chapter 34. We're going to start in the Old Testament, verse number 6. And we're going to look at this aspect of Christ being merciful. Now, when we talked about the goodness of God in the Old Testament, we hit on God's mercies. This is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit different. And I want to show there's a little bit of a difference. We're not splitting hairs here. There's a difference between being merciful and going out and showing mercy. Sorry if I'm shaking. I'm cold. I'm not going to lie. I'm very cold. So I feel like my mouth is chatting. Anyways, Exodus chapter 34. We're starting in the Old Testament. Verse number 6. This is whenever the Lord revealed himself to Moses. And look what it says. And it says, and the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, the very first thing is merciful. The very first thing, merciful. And why this is unfortunate is, unfortunately, many struggle with this concept of mercy. To the point where we say, look, we don't even really want to talk about it. Just make sure you're doing the right thing. You don't have to worry about mercy. That's not the case. We need mercy. And the first thing that God reveals that he is merciful. He's merciful. So you look at John chapter 1, verse number 18. We understand that Christ was the very explanation of God, of the Father. And so why would it be the case that Christ is not merciful? Why would it not be the case that Christ was not and is not merciful? He was the very explanation of this very thing. And so he declared it. That's not where he declared. I don't know if we've looked at this before. Exegeomai. You might have heard the term exegete, to unfold, to declare, to tell, to explain, to rehearse, to consider. That was Christ of the Father. He came to explain him. Why? The beginning of verse number 18 says, no one has seen God at any time. No one has seen him. And so how do we be like someone who we haven't seen? Christ came and he explained him. He exegeted him. He declared him. And so when we think about being merciful, it's not just about being merciful, but being merciful to ourselves, but going out and showing mercy. Going out and proactively making a point to say, you know what? I'm going to show mercy today. Or I'm going to show mercy this week. Or I'm going to show mercy this month. And eventually, that becomes a part of who we are. And it changes who we are. So consider Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. And we're still developing our thought, thinking about mercy. Verse number 7. Look what Jesus says here. One of the first statements on the Sermon on the Mount. And I want to spend a little time on this concept. It says, he said, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Now, something to keep in mind about judgment. When you think about a judge, a person that's going to proclaim a sentence or say whether something is against the law or not against the law, all those different things. A good judge doesn't only look at what is right and wrong. A good judge will also consider the motivations behind what's going on. A good judge is also going to see whenever someone does something wrong, they're going to take into account why they did what they did wrong. This is very important. Think about speeding. I actually have a few of these, actually. There's a difference. When I used to give a guy a ride when we lived in College Station, he lives in Brenham, which is about 45 to an hour away from where the building was. And we were running late, and I was going very fast over the speed limit, probably 10, 15 over. We were running late. And I got pulled over. And as soon as I saw the lights, I'm like, that's it. Like, we're done. Now, not only are they late, but I'm going to get a fat ticket. I'm going way over. The cop comes and he said, I said, I know. I said, he's like, yeah, you're going too fast. And he's like, is there a reason? I said, trying to make the church, man, we're running late. He's like, okay. He tapped the car, left, came back in like a minute. That was the fastest I've ever seen anybody process anything. And he said, go get the church, man, stay in the speaker. I said, I appreciate you, man. We made it on time. My point of bringing that out is, he gave me some mercy because he considered, I see why you're late. Another one. Whenever we're driving and I see someone going crazy, driving crazy, I always tell Sky, hey, maybe their wife is pregnant. Okay? And whenever Sky was in labor, literally in the middle of labor, we had to go to the hospital, and she was literally pregnant and in labor. And it was really late, and I was driving like a regular person. And she was like, why aren't you going faster? And I said, I don't need to. There's nobody on the road. But she said, the one time I could use my excuse of, why is pregnant? Like, this is, and actually, I'm pretty sure in Texas, if it's a legitimate emergency and pressure hazard, then like, even like a cop, they'll give you an escort. They say, okay, you're going fast, you understand. That's understandable. It's not just about you going over the speed limit. Versus, you take into account a punk kid that's just trying to have fun, going way over in a school zone. No mercy for that whatsoever. You're getting a ticket, you're getting your license revoked, all of that bad stuff is happening. Why? All of those are speeding cases. But a good judge takes into account the reason why someone is doing what they're doing. A good judge takes that into account. And so why do I bring this up? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. The goal of this lesson, one of my goals of this lesson, is to get us to understand and see in Christ how Christ looks at situations, and he looked at situations, and he would say, you know what, I understand. That's tough. It's never to say that it wasn't wrong, but it's to say, I understand. And really quick, we're going to go back to this. Matter of fact, you can do that split screen. Luke chapter 23 and verse number 34. We're going to be referencing this verse quite often. To the point, 34. To the point where he would say things like this. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And matter of fact, let me make this point while I'm here. I did some study on particularly Malcolm X and what his mentality was during the Civil Rights Movement. One thing that Malcolm X never had and could never get his mind around was this right here. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And Malcolm X's mentality, actually Martin Luther King would say that Malcolm X was the most intelligent and the most well-versed on the reasons and the causes of the issue in America with race. But Malcolm X could never understand this. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In his mind, people are going to be there, they're going to be, and that was it. But we need to have a different mentality. We need to take on the mind of Christ and get to a point where we can say, Father, forgive them. These are the ones that crucified him. These are the ones that put him on a cross, that made him suffer. He said, Father, forgive them. All right, you take that off. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Another point I want to make here. Do we know people that show others no mercy? I've been in this headspace before. Typically, they show themselves no mercy. Now, of course, we look at this and we say, yes, if you're merciful on earth, then God is going to show you mercy. In the end, yes. But consider, whenever we are merciful to others, and whenever we're merciful to ourselves, we just become healthier. We become better in our minds. We're not always just so critical of everything. And it's easier to be merciful to others when we're merciful on ourselves. And vice versa. It's easier to be merciful on ourselves when we're merciful to others. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. Be merciful to ourselves. That's another goal of this lesson. Hey, be merciful to yourself. And be merciful to others. Go to Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7, starting in verse number 36. This is going to be our first instance of Christ showing mercy. 36. Our first instance of Christ showing mercy. You can take this part.
I'll do it on the next one.
Okay. Our first instance of Christ showing mercy. Once again, we're looking at this. Look at ourselves. Look at ourselves. It says, then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at a table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil, and stood at his feet behind him weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the fragrant oil. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, this man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered and said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. So he said, Teacher, say it. There was a certain creditor who had two debtors. One owed him 500 denarii, the other 50. And when they had nothing with which to repay, he freely forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one who forgave more. And he said to him, you have rightly judged. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house, you gave me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet, since the time I came in. You did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrant oil. Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. Then he said to her, your sins are forgiven. And those who sat at the table with him began to say to themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Then he said to the woman, your faith has saved you, go in peace. That is good. Thank you. Now, starting off, go to verse number 41 for me real quick. When we see this creditor, Creditor, that's a person who lends money. Person who lends money. Now, I'm not trying to get political here, but when we think about student loan debt, one of my pet peeves when people say, hey, let's just cancel it. And the reason why it's pet peeve is because you don't cancel debt, you pay it. You don't cancel debt, you pay it. Somebody has to pay it. And in this case, it's the creditor who paid it. Maybe there's been a situation where you gave somebody $20 and you're like, I'm not getting that back. But you give it to them anyways. Who really paid it? You paid it. And so when you have a creditor, 100, 1 owed 50, 1 owed 500, when he just says he just freely forgave him, he didn't cancel it. He said, look, I'm just going to eat it. I'm going to eat the cost. And when we think about sin, sin is a debt. Sin is a debt. I was going to go to this, but I didn't want to. Matthew chapter 6, in Jesus' model prayer, he would say, Father, forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Sin is a debt. It's a debt. It's something that you owe. And here, in this case, they have a creditor that one owed him a lot, one owed him less, and he said he just freely forgave. But what that means is he says, look, I'm going to pay. You don't have to pay anymore, I'm going to pay. So you drop down to verse number 46. Verse number 47. He said, therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, he didn't discount, yes, she was wrong. She's done much wrong. But he says, her sins, which are many, they are forgiven. For she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. Then he said to her, your sins are forgiven. He says, your debt is paid. Your debt is paid. This woman came to Christ, and Christ said, I'm going to pay your debt. I'm going to pay your debt. And who was the one that paid it? Ultimately, it was Christ. Now, once again, let's not think that, I went to lunch with a guy who was very wealthy, and I told somebody that, and I said, yeah, you know how millionaires are, they want to pay for everything. And that I found is typically true. A lot of people that have a good amount of money, what's $100 for a lunch? I just pay for everybody. Drop in the bucket. We're going to see that is not how God operates. Go to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. And when we think about whenever you're inclined to do something for someone, to give to someone, typically you're inclined to those individuals who you resonate with and you know where they've been. Matter of fact, the other day, this was a few months ago, I was driving and it was kind of raining and drizzling, and I saw a guy outside of a restaurant taking out the trash. And I immediately thought of my chicken days. When it was raining and the trash needed to be taken out, I went and had to go take out that trash in the pouring rain, working for less than $8 an hour. And I went to him, I wrote down the window and I said, hey, take this, bro, keep grinding. I know what that's like. I've been there. And here, Christ does that for us. He does that for us. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse number 9. It says, for you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. It says, though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that through his poverty he might become rich. The point I want to make here is it wasn't this case where it was a drop in the bucket for God. He's like, oh yeah, just forget it. It cost him. It cost Christ. He became poor so that we can become rich. And so when we see this situation over here, and she comes to him, he's saying, your sins are forgiven. That's not a student debt cancel. Oh, it doesn't exist anymore. No. He's essentially saying, I'll pay it. I'm going to pay it. I'm going to incur your debt. And it's going to cost me, but I'm going to do it anyways. Why? Because I love you. Why? Because I'm merciful. Because I want what's best for you. We cannot forgive sins. We cannot forgive sins. But we can say what Christ said in Luke 23, verse number 34. We can request, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them. And when we're wronged, a sin is a wrong against God. It's a debt. When we're wrong and we say, well, I was the one that got hurt, Christ was the one that got hurt. Christ was the one that had to pay the debt. We paid the debt. He paid the debt. He did not owe our other debt. That's the idea. Of course, our society has a lot of debt. Most things are based on debt and credit. And can you imagine, maybe some people here can, being so drowned in debt that you cannot pay? And someone says, I'll pay it. It's all gone. I'll pay it. And you come to find out that that person, it wasn't a drop in the bucket, but they sacrificed everything to pay it. That's the situation that we're in. And that's who Christ was, and that's what Christ did. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We can develop that attitude as well. Go over to John chapter 8. John chapter 8. Here's a classic one. John chapter 8. Start at verse number 1. It says, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Now early in the morning, he came again to the temple. And all the people came in, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. Now, can you stop for just a second? I want to consider how sinister this is. Caught in adultery. Caught in adultery. Us that are mature. Caught in adultery. They brought her to him. Caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, this is sinister, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. All very well. Verse number 5. Now Moses, in the law, commands us that such should be stoned. But what did you say? Now, of course, the question is, well, where's the man? Verse number 6. This they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. Excuse me. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up, he saw no one but the woman. He said to her, Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Have no one condemned you? She said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Now, when I've looked at this in the past, I've always considered, okay, yeah, this is Christ being merciful to the woman. I want to consider, maybe other people have seen it before. This was new for me when I looked at this. Go up to verse number 5. Christ was merciful to these scribes and Pharisees. They brought in a woman caught in the act of adultery, didn't bring them in, and they did this with sinister motives to test him. And he said, He who is without sin among you, let him throw the stone at her. He's not saying that whoever's perfect. I believe he's making reference to whoever is without sin in this situation, you throw a stone at her. They were dead wrong. They were dead wrong. Came with sinister motives, only brought the woman. And they did it just so they can test him, so they can accuse him. And he's making the point, if anything, shouldn't y'all also be stoned as well? Shouldn't y'all also be punished as well? And he lets him go. And I want to make this point. Even people with sinister motives, even people who are doing things to be slimy and to trick people up and to make them look bad and to test them, to test us, Jesus was merciful to them too. He was merciful to them too. Scroll down, please. Neither do I condemn you. Now, that word condemn, it's the idea of the judge getting the gavel to the, whatever the thing is, the podium. It's to make a sentence. is not to say that was right, that was wrong. It's to say you're going to jail for life, you're going to jail for 2 weeks, you're going to jail, you're not going to jail at all. That's what condemnation is. It's to pronounce a sentence, to say that is your fate is sealed. And here, the scribes and Pharisees wanted Jesus to do that. Hey, seal her fate. But Jesus said, I don't condemn you. I'm not here to seal your fate. And if you look at John chapter 3 and verse number 17, Jesus would say, I have not come here to judge the world, but to save the world. And Jesus is making reference to, I believe, to the idea he's coming back to judge. We're going to get to that in a minute. Yeah, to condemn the world, but the world like through him might be saved. But he made the point, I'm not here to seal anyone's fate. That's not why he came here first. Now, when he comes back, that's going to be a different story. But he said, that's not why I'm here. Please go back to that John chapter 8. But notice this. He says, neither do I condemn you. But look what he says. Go and sin no more. She got off. She got off. And he's telling her, change your life. That is what mercy looks like. It's not to say, well, I guess we just can't say anything to anybody about nothing. I believe it looks like, yeah, you were wrong. But I'm going to let it go and don't do it again. Don't do it again. Can you imagine the strength that takes? Especially when you're talking about sin. Sin was a debt. Christ was the one that had to pay. It affected him. It hurt him. Whenever we are affected by others' actions, whether they know it or not, and it comes a time to say, you know what? You were wrong, but I'm going to let it go. Just go and don't do it again. And I want to make this point. Go to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, and verse number 10. I want to make this point. When we think about condemnation, sealing someone's face, sealing someone's fate, those people are going to burn. What does that do for us? What does that do for us? Telling someone, yeah, you're going to burn forever. What does that do for us? What if we all get to heaven and we see someone who we thought, oh, for sure, they're going to be lost. And we see them walking into heaven. We're going to say, hey, God, didn't you know that? Don't you know that they did this? Would it make heaven any worse if someone comes in that we didn't think was going to be there? What is that? What is condemnation? Pronouncing someone's sin, what does that do for us? All right, really doesn't do much. Because God's not going to be in this position where, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, you're right. No, God knows he's the ultimate judge. But look at this. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in his body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. Knowing therefore the terror of the Lord, what we do is we persuade men. That's what we do. We're trying to be persuasive. Yes, we do understand the judgment is coming, and the Lord there's terror involved. Yes, there are consequences. So we try to persuade. We try to persuade. That's our goal. Now, maybe someone might be persuaded by telling them they're going to burn forever. Maybe. But condemning someone, what does that do for us? And number two, that's not our job. Like saying someone is going to, that goes the other way too. Trying to put someone in heaven, that's not going to do that. God is the only one that can do that. And so I want to encourage us here. I personally, this is me personally. I personally have taken a lot of these things out of my vocabulary. That person is going to heaven. That person is going, because I don't know. Number one. Number two, even if I say that, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to change it. God's not going to be like, you know what, Mike, you're right. You're right. That's not what's going to happen here. Now you can say, well, Mike, yes, I understand. But my point here is, ever since doing that, my mind has been so much more at ease because I'm not having to do a job that is not mine. And that is put people in an eternal state. That's not my job. So you know what I'm going to try and do? I'm going to try to persuade as many as I possibly can. I'm going to try to persuade as many. Christ was merciful. He was merciful. Now here's the last one. Go to Hebrews chapter 4. Now this one here, we have technology, right? Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14. I want you to put these side by side. Hebrews chapter 4, verse number 14, and then go to 1 John chapter 2, verse number 1. 1 John chapter 2, and verse number 1. And then can you scroll down to 14 at the top so you can see through 16 first. So we saw in the beginning, Christ was merciful. He forgave sins and paid a debt. We saw in John chapter 8, he did not condemn. And he said, go and sin no more. He was merciful. Now, I want to make the point that Christ is still being merciful. Talking about being Christ-like. We saw examples, and we see still continual action. You're still trying to be like Christ. Look what Christ is doing. Look how he's still being merciful. It says, seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast to our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now I want to focus on this last part. This hit me when I was looking at this morning. That we may obtain mercy. Who here does not want mercy? Who does not want mercy? As a matter of fact, a better question is who does not need mercy? And far too often, we try to get ourselves to a point where we say, I don't need mercy. I am so good, I don't need mercy. And you say, look, you don't have to be in that attitude. You're going to get it. And you can come boldly. You're going to get it. And look what else you're going to find. You're going to find grace to help in time of need. Baker was talking this morning. He could call people to help. And 100% guaranteed, if he would have called someone would have showed up. This is what's going on here. Grace to help in time of need. Sympathize with our weaknesses. Christ knows we are human. He knows we have flaws. And this is what we're not. No, like we have serious things that we need to clean up in our lives. And we need to be better. We need to be more consistent about. And here, he's saying you can come boldly because Christ, he knows. He can sympathize. And you can get mercy. And you can find grace to help whenever you need it. And then 1 John 2, my little children, these things I write to you so that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. We have someone that is arguing on our behalf. We have someone that is arguing on our behalf. Now, I confessed to Sky the other day. I said, you know what, I need to be better about whenever other people are talking bad about other people that I don't know. I need to be better at standing up for them in the video when they're not there. I need to be a better sort of advocate. Be better at that. And that's what Jesus is doing right now. He is advocating with the Father, our saying, I know this life. That's tough. Give them some mercy. They need help. They're in need. They need help. Baker, he cannot put that couch up on his shoulders and go up through fire. He has need. Triggers it for this. But whenever it comes to real things, like some people have issues with how they control themselves, they have need. They have need. Some people have issues with how they behave in certain scenarios around certain people, they have need. They have need. Some people have issues with disciplining themselves, they have need. They have need. And as a matter of fact, I forgot this point, but on the woman who washed Jesus' feet, it might be good for us to reread that and just insert your name right there, because that's pretty accurate. We have tons of need. And we can get mercy, and we can get grace to help. Why? Because Jesus is right there, advocating for us with the Father, saying, I know what that's like. It's tough. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. But give him another shot. Give him another try. And that is Christ still saying, Luke chapter 23, verse number 34, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. why can we not do this for ourselves? You know how many people can't sleep at night because they're just so laden with guilt? God's forgave them, but they have not forgiven themselves. I was talking to a guy, and he was saying, you know, I'm trying to get back into doing what's right. I've been doing good for a little bit. But he said the people that were most critical of him was his own church. The people in his own church still will not let go the things he's already asked for forgiveness. We can't forgive ourselves. We can't forgive others. We can't be merciful. And it just leads us to this attitude that is just bitter and no one wants to be around. While Jesus is over here saying, Father, forgive them. Forgive them. The very ones that put him on the cross, that we say people are violating and disrespecting whenever they go off, he's saying, Father, forgive them. And then when they come back, he won't let it go. But Jesus is over here saying, Father, forgive them. For they do not know what they do. We can do that for ourselves. We can do that for others. We can be merciful to others. Proactively. Go to Hebrews chapter 5. Hebrews chapter 5. Start verse 1. Talking about the high priest and the role of the high priest. I want to focus on verse 2. Look what the high priest can do. Christ is our high priest, but he's making this point. He said the high priest, he can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray. Now, I want to, technology. What is compassion? Look at this. Gentle. Matter of fact, to treat indulgently, look at that word indulgent, is the idea to be very, can you do that? Basically, it's the idea to be very gentle, almost to like a point of too gentle. You can have compassion. Ignorant and going astray. What is going astray? Look at this. Roaming, going astray, deceived, erred. Some people are ignorant, some people are deceived. And the high priest, he can be gentle to those who are misguided. He can be gentle to those who just don't know. And when I was reading this and studying this, I inserted myself. I'm sure that Christ looks down at me and says, he just doesn't know. He's just misguided. And I hope that Christ is advocating with the Father on my behalf, saying, I get it. Forgive. And we can't do that for ourselves. If you're trying, and you know, and you and God alone know if you are trying, and you make a mistake because you're either ignorant or you're misguided, you don't think Christ is saying, he's trying. Forgive me. And that was one of the things that Christ did for us. Why? Because he's merciful. And he explained to the Father who is merciful. And he wants to be merciful. It's not the situation where it's like, all right, fine. No. He wants to be merciful. He wants to forgive. And he understands there are some people that are ignorant, some people that are just misguided, some people that whenever, my dad would say, talking about being careful whenever you back people against the wall. He said, when you back a cat against the wall, he has one option. He's going to fight that. There's no other option. And then our survivalist instinct kicks in. Whenever certain people get backed into a certain corner and they start to behave a certain way, misguided. You have some kids that are not raised in the best of situations, misguided. You have some people that they were raised and that is a certain situation is all they know. We're going to hit on this a little bit in the second lesson. All they know, we can be the ones to, hey, we get it. Be merciful. No, it's not right, but we can say, hey, don't do that again. Please, don't do that again. And I make this point and we'll conclude. One of the things I had to check myself on as well, recently I had a conversation with a guy yesterday, 2 days ago, Friday. And we were talking about the Pharisees. And he made the point, he said the Pharisees, they practically had the Old Testament memorized, many of them, especially the law, memorized. These were knowledgeable people. But that knowledge blinded them to where they couldn't even see Christ, who was standing right in front of them. They couldn't see their own flaws. They couldn't see the danger in their own tradition. And I confessed and I said, is that me? Is my knowledge causing my blindness, causing my ignorance, causing me being erred, thinking, well, it has to be this way? Is that me? And when we think about being merciful, what we do is we put ourselves in other people's shoes. We look at the Pharisees, those Pharisees. And we call other people, those are just Pharisees. Am I the Pharisee? The person I'm condemning, look at, oh, David did this, Dad. Are we David? Are we Abraham who lied to save his skin? That's us. But Christ is merciful. God is merciful, and he wants to forgive us. And he is advocating with the Father. Luke chapter 23, verse number 34. Father, forgive them. They do not know what they do. So in conclusion, that's the lesson. In conclusion, let's be merciful. Let's go out and let's show mercy. Let's not be in this position where we say, yeah, I'm merciful. Yeah, I'm merciful. Just wait for something to happen to me. Watch. No. You think about autopay. Most autopay, they send you a receipt, right? But then when it comes time to actually paying the bill, it's like, I know many people, I'm probably going to put too, I don't know how to pay a certain bill. I don't know where to go. It's just on autopay. We treat our character traits like that sometimes. Yeah, I'm merciful. We go, I heard a sermon on mercy. Yeah, I can do that. But when it comes down to it, do we have the receipt to say, yep, I have done it. I know how to do it. That's who I am. And I go out and I go do it. Those are two different things. Let's be merciful. Let's be forgiving. Let's say to people, hey, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And mercy is something that often looks weak. It looks weak. But if you think about it, mercy is one of the strongest character traits out there. Being merciful to people, especially the ones that we say don't deserve it, that's a strong character trait. Let's become those people. Let's begin to strive to look like Christ in that way. If you have any in the congregation, come now as we stand in that position. Green,